I did find another gem, another project that has promise. I did find another project that I've heard of before, didn't do a really deep dive, but I'm going to do like somewhat of an overview for you guys because it is promising. It's a L1, it's also in privacy, and it's in AI space too. So this could be a project, could be a gem as the market continues upwards. And who are they? Well, Oasis Network. Oasis Network, they're still relatively small. 400 million market cap. I say relative because compared to some of the other guys, they're double or triple or quadruple Oasis. So Oasis Network is in all these things that I've just mentioned. Now, as for, they're in a lot of exchanges already. So Binance, KuCoin, Coinbase, Bybit, all these guys, Binance.us. So that really helps them. Also looking at like the circulating supply is 57% out of total. So these are good things. Exchange listings and also how much of the circulating supply out of the max supply to token economics is looking good. Okay, so just get that out of the way. But what is Oasis? Well, they are an L1 network that provides privacy for Web 3.0. They are EVM and Solidity compatible, which means that basically you could think about Oasis, well, they are their own L1, but you could also think of them as like a L2 on top of all other EVM compatible chains, because basically for any dApp makers that's EVM compatible can utilize Oasis Network and gain privacy, okay, and hide transactions. And you may think, well, why do you need to do that? Well, I'll get to that in a little bit. But in a nutshell, that's what Oasis is. They are a privacy network for Web 3.0, specifically EVM compatible dApps. Okay, so why do you need privacy? Well, they have a few dApps already, not the biggest, okay, but they're starting there. Why do you need privacy? Is it because you want to hide all your transactions? Yes. For legitimate reasons or illegitimate reasons? Well, the government would argue all privacy things has to be illegitimate, right? But that's not the case. Because if you are, let's say, in the healthcare industry or financial industry, you can't have everything ride on top of a public ledger where you can actually see. Like if you're Microsoft or you're Google, you may not want to let people know the vendors you work with or how much people are paying for services or your contracts. You can't put that publicly out there. And same thing if you're a healthcare provider, if you're a large hospital, you don't want patient data, you don't want names and social security numbers and everything else to be riding on top of a public, ledger, public, ledger. So that is why privacy does have its use case, right? And plus, just being a general retail investor, you don't want to let people track your wallet and see how much you spend and how much you're sending, right? Maybe you want some of that privacy too. That's the whole point of this. But there are a lot of industries right now that can't use a public ledger. It's just impossible for them because you can't have all this sensitive data reside publicly for people to search, right? Now, there are other privacy coins out there that kind of lock things up and put it onto the private or the public chain, I should say. So they have like a private and public chain. Oasis kind of just solves that altogether. They use ZK technology, ZK roll-up technology, where basically they'll hide everything and then just put the essential stuff onto their L1. But essentially, this is the reason why privacy coins or privacy chains or privacy projects, they have their use case because you can't have everything residing open publicly. Here's another good example. Equifax, okay, which measures people's credit ratings and, of course, looks at a whole bunch of data from users, right? They are looking at doing something on Oasis because, again, you can't have all that information public, right? There's a lot of use cases for privacy and hiding some of the results and hiding transactions because you don't want people to know about it, right? Same thing. They're partnered up with Meta. This is interesting. This is actually for basically surveys, to actually do fair surveys that no one can see, anonymous surveys, so you can't identify who is from or who it is, right? And they're they're partnering up with Meta for that reason too. So, I mean, these are just a few examples, right? A few examples. Now, the team basically came out of Berkeley. The founder was a professor of computer science at Berkeley. So, and they're based in the U.S. So, you know, pretty good from that standpoint. And also, they're into AI. That's the thing. Really, what Oasis is about is interoperability because they're EVM compatible, right? On-chain privacy, I mentioned all those things, and AI and big data, okay? So they want to be in that space too. So they're kind of all three in one. So obviously I mentioned this because AI is such a big deal right now, right? But hey, AI, big data, machine learning, they can take advantage of what Oasis has too, and you know, who knows? Who knows what might spur up in the future? But that is definitely one of their three branches of what they want to get into. So that's kind of what Oasis in a nutshell. People have asked me about Oasis before. Wasn't that familiar, but now after learning about them, I think they're a pretty decent project. Also, in case you're wondering, right, it's not just them that's kind of trying to get into the ZK space and privacy space. For example, we know that Polygon is using ZK technology, right? They're trying to push their ZK-EVM, right? ZK is just zero knowledge proofs, and there's several ways to look at it. But basically, they take information and process it so that it basically gives back yes or no without actually knowing the data. So basically, it hides the data, right? So you could use it for many things like scaling, but you could also use it for privacy, which is what Oasis is using it for. But you have Polygon that's using it for scaling. And then you have like someone like Cardano. I don't think anyone talks about this anymore. But Charles says IOHK is trying to come out with a new blockchain, a new sidechain for Cardano, and a new token, right, utilizing ZK technology. So it's called Midnight. I haven't heard this. This was talked about back in November, but even Cardano, you know, recognizes, yeah, there's a use case for privacy, right? And they are working on their side chain with a new token using ZK rollups. So basically, there's many projects that's in the space that's trying to utilize the technology. Now, with all that said, this all sounds great, but there's one thing that may be holding this back, right? And holding projects back that are in the privacy space. And that's regulators, okay? Regulators do not like the concept where they can't track transactions. They love to track everything on chain, which is why they all want to come out with their CBDCs. They want to come out with their own digital dollar, digital ruble, digital yen, digital whatever, because if everything is digital and everything is trackable, well, then they get a ton more insight into what people are doing with their money. Rather than dollars, you can't really track it, right, if it's physical. But because of that, some countries are already cracking down. So you could see Dubai just issued a privacy coin ban. This was just 2 days ago. So there are countries that are very not in tune with this, right? They do not want things to be hidden, which is why you have guys like Monero or Zcash and others, Horizon. You know, a lot of them have been delisted from exchanges because countries have basically pressured exchanges to delist, right? So that's the one thing that's holding, I would say, the whole privacy sector back, because governments hate it. They hate it. Now, if you want to use it, great. But this one thing to keep in mind, because a lot of these projects are still on exchanges. They're still relatively small, not targeted. But if they get bigger, will they be? Quite possibly. So just throwing that out there. But overall, I think Oasis sounds like a pretty good project. And I mentioned decent team, good tokenomics, they're in AI, and they're EVM compatible. These are all great things.